If you don't want your boss's job, you're on the wrong path. It came from one day to the next where I looked around and I was like, this is not my life. Everything just felt wrong all of a sudden. Like my entire life just felt wrong. I'm not very good at journaling, but I did in that period where I wrote like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my day. Like I wake up, I have no idea what am I going to do all day. I don't have work. Like I don't know what I'm going to do. There's nothing that's so bad it's not good for something. You think the world is on fire when bad things happen to you. There's always a silver lining.
Welcome to Unplannable, the podcast for people whose lives did not go according to plan or they were not supposed to succeed, and they're killing it anyway. Join me for the behind the scenes of how people got amazing jobs and careers, even though they didn't go to the perfect school, they didn't choose the perfect major, they didn't have the perfect job after college, and honestly, they kind of didn't know what they were doing, but they figured it out as they went. I'm your host, Gina, and I was voted most likely to drop out of college. And I did. I also got fired and laid off before I was hired to be the head of growth and marketing at Duolingo, built my own venture capital firm since, met a president at the White House, worked on a presidential campaign, and I'm now building my own venture-backed startup. Feel like everyone else has a map but you don't? Great, you're in the right place. No plan, no problem. Welcome to Unplannable. Okay, Mathilde, thank you so much for joining me on the Unplannable podcast.
Thank you for having me, Gina. I'm excited.
I'm super excited about this chat. Before we go deeper into like all the topics that we have to discuss, can you give me your 2-minute A side and 2-minute B side introduction? So, like, in other words, the version of your story that people see on LinkedIn that just looks incredibly impressive, and then the version of how it actually felt behind the scenes.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Denmark. I grew up in what you would call a UN family. My parents moved to Switzerland before I was born. I grew up in Geneva for 18 years of my life. I did well in high school. I got into a top university in the UK. I went to University of Warwick, which is like known as the school where everybody that didn't get into Cambridge or Oxford end up at. I was there for 3 years, also graduated with a phenomenal degree from there. And then I moved to Sweden, got my first job out of school there, was there for 2 years. And I had started in that job in the midst of COVID, which meant that they had gone from a 40-person team to a 2-person team and meant I was able to take a lot of ownership very early on and rose the ranks there very quickly and got to be a manager at 21 of people that were 10 years older than I was, and definitely experienced some imposter syndrome there. But after 2 years, just didn't feel like it was where I was meant to be anymore. So I quit. I traveled around the world, did my gap year era for myself, and then ended up getting hired by BeReal and really joined them at the peak of when it was you would walk into a cafe if it was the time of BeReal, like everybody was taking it. We were mentioning SNL, like everything was golden. It was like the sexiest job on the planet. And I was living in New York at the time. Like everything was just great. And then they got acquired for 500 million euros, which also awesome, but meant that I got the boots, which is maybe a bit of a B-side thing, but it led me to where I am today. And I got another job now, work with a phenomenal team, moved to New York, fell in love. Everything's pretty. And yeah, that's definitely like the shiny side of things.
How old are you?
I'm 25. The B side is more looking into, I obviously grew up in a country where the culture in my house was very different from the culture I was experiencing outside the house. If like Danish parents are very, very focused, especially Danish parents that live abroad, very, very focused on giving on having that culture inside the doors. My mom was always like, the second you step into this house, it's like the Danish embassy. Like we're like, this is like Danish culture. We speak Danish, all these things. But I grew up in a French environment outside of that. I went to French school, which was incredibly strict, incredibly authoritative. I didn't feel like I had a voice or any of that stuff. I would say really suffered from really, really like massive lack of confidence in my early teenage years. My parents got divorced in the middle of that at like the best time ever for any teenager at like 14 years old while I was away at boarding school. So I left for boarding school. I came back. My parents were living in separate homes. I ended up going to this super fancy schmancy university and I have a really hard time there. I am, it was really difficult for me to go to a place where all of a sudden I wasn't learning a bunch of different things and I was just specializing in one thing and I was scared that I had gone down a different path. I'm looking around at everybody around me. Everybody seems to be having a phenomenal time and everybody seems to know exactly what they want, where they want to work. Everybody kind of seems to have a path figured out for themselves. Like at the time, I had no idea. And also, you walk into a university that's so good, now you're just as good as everybody else. And I was very adamant that I was the best at something before that, and I just wasn't anymore. So I had a really tough time finding my way there and end up going uh, applying for a job in Sweden and getting it, but it definitely wasn't the sexiest job that I was hoping for.
Wait, before that, didn't everyone around you want to be like work in consulting and and whatever finance, and you were like, oh, I'm going to do that too, but then you were the only one who didn't get anything?
Yeah, very good
You
point.
didn't want to do that part.
Yeah. No, everybody at work, it was a very like consultant investment bankery school. I didn't know before I got there. I didn't even know what any of these fields meant at the time. But yeah, this is what everybody wanted to do. Everybody was sending in their applications for spring weeks. We're going to all the career fairs. Everybody knew everything. And everybody also knew where everybody was interning. Everybody was posting it on LinkedIn, all these things. So I've always been a person like I was very much in looking to seek out prestige. So I just wanted to do what everybody else was doing because that's what people would clap at you for. So I decided to apply to all these things as well. I didn't get anything, which thank God in hindsight. But at the time, it was devastating. So like seeing everybody around you get something and just also because I had worked really hard to get it. And I think I was kind of used to if I worked hard for something, I always got it. I didn't in this scenario. That was really, really difficult. After like contemplating for a really long time, kind of like had this epiphany of this is not even what I want to do. Like these people want to go into these jobs and are going to work 24/7. And it just wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I started applying to jobs in other places and I put my focus into the things that I could control. And I was like, what am I actually interested in a workplace? And I was like, I just want to work with people that are happy to work there. Like, I just want to work with people who are enjoying it. And so I applied to a few jobs and I got a job in Sweden. So happy for 2 years. And then I walked into a period where I was just, I looked around. It came from one day to the next where I looked around and I was like, this is not my life. I feel like I peaked in a way at this company. I'm super early in my career. I'm really confused. I don't feel inspired by anybody around me anymore. I was living with a boyfriend at the time. Everything just felt wrong all of a sudden. Like my entire life just felt wrong. And I kind of lived that for a month until I walked into my boss's office and I was like, I don't think I should be here anymore. I was definitely out of university when everybody had all these sexy jobs and everybody was moving to London. It was definitely something that didn't feel comfortable for me to say. I don't know. I didn't get a sexy job. It's a good company and I had a great time there, but I didn't get a sexy job. So it wasn't something I was screaming on the roof about, that's for sure. And it's not something I felt proud. I think I felt proud internally because I enjoyed my job, but externally, it definitely wasn't like what I would be posting about or talking about. I mean, I think quitting my job and then not knowing what to do for 6 months, having to move back in with my parents in Switzerland it felt like the end of my life. Now I think back of it, I was like 22 years old. Like was not bad at all, but it felt like I was like, this is that was embarrassing. Like talk about embarrassing. That was embarrassing. I was like, I have to tell people that I'm moving back to my parents' house. I even remember going to the mayor's office to re-register as a resident, and they were like, are you gonna make money while you're in Switzerland? And I was like, no. Like, and I remember crying about that later that day, actually, because I was like, I have no job and I don't know what I'm going to do. And this lady at the mayor's office bullied me. And I don't know, like it was really, really rough. And also because I didn't know what I wanted to do, it was because I had this like super unclear direction. It felt like nothing was going to make me happy. And because I don't have a passion, I'm not a person who's artists since they're 7 years old know they want to be artists. I don't have that. Like I kind of think I've agreed with myself that that's probably not going to happen for me, and that's not the way I'm going to go. I can find things I'm passionate about, but I don't have that. So just this like feeling of just being lost and unaccomplished, and feeling like I took 10 steps back. I actually remember my old boss saying to me, like, you ripped the carpet out from under your life. That's exactly what I did. Like, I took away I don't think he meant it in a horrible way. We're in very good terms. But I was like, yeah, like I completely just took everything that was comfortable and left it. So felt like I had made a massive mistake for a really long time. And I think the last B side I'll talk about is last year when BeReal got acquired, which was obviously a phenomenal thing for the company, but I loved that job and I was so lucky to be in that job and it was so much fun. And a lot of us got the boot when they got acquired, and I very much had a feeling of like, you just don't get this lucky twice. Like, it's not going to happen for me again. So there was also a period there, kind of the same, like this lack of clarity of what I wanted to do. I think I was richer in skills and I had a better company on my CV now, so I had more opportunities than the first time around. But it was definitely difficult. I actually remember a journal entry right after that I wrote, I'm not very good at journaling, but I did in that period where I wrote like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my day. Like I wake up, I have no idea what am I going to do all day. I don't have work. Like I don't know what I'm going to do. And then 3 months later, it's like, I am so excited to go to work and do all these things today and just like have a plan. So it's funny like how quickly things change in hindsight. It also like even just telling you this story, you saw how many parts I skipped through accidentally just because I don't even take time to think about it necessarily. But there were a lot of periods that were difficult. Yeah.
I really identify with all of that because when I got the boot from Tumblr, also because they were being acquired, it really felt like it felt like the end of my life, and it felt like everybody around me would think that I was fired because I wasn't good enough, and that like oh, I wasn't selected to stay at Tumblr. But the truth is that they had decided to like let go of anyone who was doing international work. But I truly believe I was going to be like blacklisted by anyone that I had like encountered during my time at Tumblr. But it's like it's crazy to think about that now, but I really truly believe that. We're gonna go into a little bit more detail now. I love the part where you said that like boarding school completely changed you. You went from not caring about school at all and like thinking you're bad at it basically to discovering a whole new side of yourself. What can that teach us about how much our environment shapes us, and what can someone do if they're feeling lost right now like in their school but they can't like go to boarding school?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think environment is everything. And I think it's really difficult when you're still under 18, you're financially dependent of your parents. Like, there are very few people that have the option to go to a different school and able to change their entire environment. I was really lucky to get to do that. Um, I think once you're old enough and you're able to control the things around you, it's just about you're the person who gets to design everything that's around you. You're designing who you're surrounding yourself with, what books you're consuming, everything. Like you can reshape all these things. When you're still living at home and figuring things out and you're not able to make all these changes, I think they're just these micro environment changes that you can make, like pick up a new hobby, figure out something that just sparks a little joy for you and lean into that. I remember when I was in university and I didn't really have the option. I mean, I could have dropped out when I didn't enjoy it, but I don't have that in me. I definitely don't. I'm not the person who could do that.
I dropped out.
No, I love that for you. I was not brave enough because girl, like I was like, I already got in here. If I also had to drop out, I was like, couldn't take the embarrassment for me, like I was scared of what people would
It
think,
was
which
horrible.
yeah, I bet. So I think like at that time I kind of started figuring out like I started listening to podcasts and stuff and just leaned into a little bit more of things that interested me. I was super fascinated by like brain biology and all these things. So just like leaned into that slightly more. And so automatically I just started connecting more with people that were interested in that type of stuff as well. And so that just changed my environment slightly. But I do want to underline like I was so lucky to be able to do something like that. I think changing like micro variables in your life is a small step you can take
For sure.
towards changing that. But yeah, that's probably
Well,
my best advice.
well, you have more advice, and I'm gonna
No,
pull it out of you.
we'll
So
see.
I really identify with that. I didn't go to boarding school or anything like that, but I was like I definitely saw myself as a loser in middle school and high school, and I don't think it was just me that saw me as a loser.
Oh.
But then I had to do bat mitzvah classes after school at one
Mm,
point, and when I got there, someone asked me, "Oh, I know your school. Are you a popular kid or are you a loser?" Like she legit just asked me that question, and I said, "Oh, I'm popular." And then I like decided to pretend that I was popular while I was there and act as if a popular kid was. And I convinced these kids that I was cool. And like I became cool Gina because then I suddenly started getting like confident because these people all thought I was like pretty and cool. And
I
it's just
love
like
that.
just a matter of like just changing environments and like pretending to be something else and actually making it true, you know?
100%. I think like we also underestimate heavily how cool we are in general. I think like as kids, but it's like something where we don't even understand why people would think that we would be cool because of the environment that we're in. So yeah, a lot of the time it is definitely just like acting as if you have it together. And thing is, people tend to believe us. So, but it's difficult to feel that in the moment.
Totally. But one thing I love that you did, talking about like sort of like micro changes in your environment, is that you changed friend groups on purpose to be around top students when you were like, okay, I don't care about school, my friends don't care about school. Maybe it's time for me to hang out with people who do care about school. I would love to hear more about how you made the decision, because it's like a really tough one. And then how did that decision actually impact how you saw yourself? And if you have any advice related to that to someone who wants to build a circle that is pulling them upward.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I just have always had this belief that like your circle's your ceiling, like is as high. It's a better way of saying like you're an average of the five people you hang out with most, but it is something I so genuinely believe. I think this particular scenario for context was in high school, when I wanted to get into a top university, and I made that decision that I was going to work really hard, and so I wanted to make sure that I was studying hard enough. Like I said before, like school didn't come naturally to me. Like I did, like I was never great at math. I was never great at anything in school. I had to work really hard to get good grades, but I was really good at studying. So I like just made an active decision to hang out with people didn't even need that time, but were interested in spending 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the library leading up to exam season. I became comfortable hanging out with them and spending time with them. And they were phenomenal people, and I'm friends with all of them still to this day. But I think there are a lot of friends that fit into different seasons of your life. It's a lot of how I see it. And you've moved around a lot, so you've probably also felt this, but you outgrow a lot of people as you go and as your goals change. I think back to like all my friends in Denmark. They're in very different places in their life. They're talking about renovating their kitchens and moving in with their boyfriends and all this stuff. And the period that I'm in my life right now is very career focused. And so the people that I surround myself with are people that align with that. It doesn't mean that I'm not friends with these people anymore, but we definitely have less to connect on. But I look up to them in tons of different ways. So I don't think it's this about like changing friend groups or cutting people out. It's figure out which traits that you would like to see in yourself and identify those in other people, and then just surround yourself with those people. I think having people you look up to in your life is such a gift. The people you work with have to be like up there number one. The partner you choose also like so important that they inspire you. Your friends also. It's the people you spend the most time with you have to be incredibly selective about, because they're going to determine how you're going to do.
Totally agree. I have thoughts about the partner and how that fits into that equation, but I made a very different decision. And like we could talk about that another time in this podcast. But
Mm.
moving along your life, one interesting thing is that you got into a top college, basically like super cool Warwick, like all the top people are there. Is there something that you think that like if you knew in advance that someone had told you would have helped you transition better into that experience because you hated it? Or do you think it was kind of like doomed to fail from the start?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a few things. I'm a very optimistic person, which means that unfortunately I get disappointed a lot of times because I choose, but I wouldn't change that for the world. Like I think it's much better to be a positive. But I think if somebody had just told me to not put so much pressure on the experience, and I felt like the entire experience had to be good. You know what I mean? Like it was like everything around it had to be good. That's not true. Like parts of it can be good. Like the friends that I made, they're phenomenal. Like the best people I know. There were teachers that were great. Like they identify the things that are good and stick with those. You're never going to like everything about an experience. So I wish I had gotten that advice. And I think the second thing is university is interesting because you go from this generalist studies where you're kind of like all spectrums. You have biology class, you have psychology class, you have English, French, languages, math, like all these things. And then you go into like more of a specialty, and I felt understimulated. I was like, and now I'm in these marketing classes. I'm learning theory of marketing, and I'm not the type of person who can sit still in a class and listen to theory. I want to go out and do stuff. Having that expectation reset before would have been awesome. Like just to have known, hey, FYI, like you're not going to feel as educated all of the sudden, because I no longer had classes that were about politics or any of this stuff. I had to learn to seek out all these things by myself on the side. Being a specialist makes a lot of sense if you have a passion and you have something you love. I always think, and even when I hire people, I always ask like what their zone of genius is, and that's like what you're the best at and what you also enjoy doing. Like, what's that overlap? That's where you should be. And if it so happens that you have a passion that's so strong and you would like to specialize down there, I think it makes a lot of sense to do that. I think if you have no clue like me, it's better to keep the doors open. And again, I'm a type of person. I think I can learn anything. I don't know if that's like a toxic trait about me, but I really definitely have a thing in me that says if I work hard enough, like I could learn anything. So I feel like just being a generalist and keeping all the doors open. And if I do find that passion and I want to go into that specific niche, then that's what I'll do. I just haven't found it yet.
Well, the thing is that, like, even if we want to be generalists, which I am too, I think, like, especially early in your career, you need to be able to spike at something so that you like can at least be more interesting than the other candidates, because everyone's like might be like a generalist too. So you could be like, I'm a great, I'm great at building teams, or I'm a great writer, whatever, and then leverage that opportunity to be a generalist.
I think a lot of people spend a lot of time fixing where their weaknesses are, which I do think is a good thing. Just don't spend too much time on it because there are people like we can hire for that, is always what I say. Like, I'm like, we will hire somebody where your weaknesses are their strengths, and then we'll pair you guys together and you're going to be a great team. But spending time on fixing your weaknesses when you could be so, so strong at something, I view that as such a waste of time. Comparison will never help. I'm also like off Instagram or any place where I could spend time comparing myself to other people because it makes me so genuinely unhappy. And I will be the first person that wants to be the best at something. And the reality is, there's always going to be somebody who's better than you at a specific category of something. So I've just kind of accepted that I want to live my life and where I kind of move with soul and like feel where I feel happy, and then I chase that. I think also like the claps will come automatically because if you lean into what you enjoy, you're also going to be good at it. That is my genuine belief. You're going to be good at what you enjoy doing because you have a really vested interest in being good at it, so you can keep doing what makes you happy. And then you can actually go ahead and become the best at that thing. So the claps come down the line.
Agree with you 100%, and that's amazing advice. Something that like caught my attention when we talked about this. There's another guest on the episode who like is doing phenomenally, Seamus Madan, and he was like, you know what, if you just keep going after what everyone else is doing, so let's say like getting the claps and like going for the consulting opportunities, like you're just going to be like everyone else. And in your case, it's like if you try to get that and you even can't, like why are you still trying to get that? Like, let's go, everyone's going right, I'm going to have to go left. And you had to go left, and it felt like a failure at the time. But I think what's interesting is that you ended up finding this job that you kind of were embarrassed of, but because it was that job, you got so much responsibility that you were able to grow so quickly, and it ended up being a career hack. Like that you ended up being like able to do way more than you would have if you had been a consultant along with everybody else who's a sheep consultant at the same firm with the same title. So in a way, like a blessing in disguise.
100%, 100%. I mean, everything seems like a blessing in disguise in the end, you know what I mean? Like, but obviously in the moment you don't know it. But yeah, it was definitely a career hack. I think also working at a startup is a career hack in itself. It obviously wasn't a startup what I came into, but because they had scrapped so much staff and I came in, it felt like a startup. Like we had to rebuild the market up to what it was pre-COVID. So obviously there was a playbook on how to do it, but it felt super scrappy and so much fun. And I think there is ownership and responsibilities I got in the first year of that job that people my age are yet to get in their consulting jobs.
How can you know, like, especially I guess if you don't necessarily have a safety net, like, and just let's just try to think through this for a sec, like that it's time to quit, like knowing the difference between quitting because you're scared of something or quitting because you're growing, or like choosing to believe that like there's something better ahead when you can't see it.
I think it was actually kind of a mix of both. I think I was scared not to grow. I think was maybe I felt like I had reached what I wanted to. I had achieved what I wanted to in that job and just wasn't inspired about what my next steps were. Some great advice that I got once was like, if you don't want your boss's job, you're on the wrong path. And I felt like at the time I didn't want my boss's job. And so that was also a good push to get out. I don't think it was because I had a feeling that the grass would be greener somewhere else, but I'm telling you, Gina, I had the most intense gut feeling that that wasn't where I should be anymore. Like my body was telling me that I shouldn't be there anymore. I think it's difficult to know there's a phenomenal book. I think it's just called by Annie Duke. I love that book. I actually read it right after I ended up quitting. It talks about how humans have a really tough time assessing when a good time, when we should step out of things, and when we have to count our sunk costs and be like, that's when we're very committed to something, we'd like to take it to the end. Um, so it's very difficult because your brain is going to tell you to not do it because you've already invested so much in it. Like the rational in me should have been like, you've gotten so far in such little time, like you're on track to like be a VP at like 27, like you're like, go for it. And also why it felt like so devastating to leave because I was on a great track.
Okay, another cool thing I like that I think is interesting about your experience is that like you had all these great like formative moments where you got so much opportunity and you got to learn so much, but then you quit everything. You're totally lost and you end up working for BeReal. But it's not because you were doing such a good job that you got recommended. It's not because you're doing such a good job that like this like you were basically lost, didn't know what you were going to do next. You bought a train ticket that was like way too expensive in your own words and you thought was a mistake to go visit someone like I guess like a friend in a way with like networking, but you didn't think anything was going to come out of it. And then this opportunity sprung on your face and ended up being like the super sexy, cool job. Would love to hear if you have any advice for someone who like doesn't think that they're going to get the opportunity to work at a place like BeReal, like in terms of like, how can you put yourself in situations that make it more likely that these doors will open?
Yeah, what happened was after I had gone through months of not knowing what I was going to do with my life. I was job searching on my iPad on LinkedIn, which in my opinion is the worst place to have to look for a job. But I was job searching on there and trying to figure out. And then a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I know," texted me from university. We're very close in university, but hadn't spoken for a few years. We're kind of fell out of touch, and texted me that he was going to be in Paris and I was in Geneva, and it was a 3 hour train. So why don't I come visit him and we can hang out and catch up? And we did, and he was working at BeReal at the time, and he was like, "I heard you quit. Wanna like come have a chat with the COO? We're setting up this program." So I knew he was working at BeReal at the time, but he was a friend of mine, so it was never an expectation that that opportunity was going to come at all while going. But I had a gut feeling that I just had to go on that trip. I think my best advice for people that don't know they're going to get that opportunity is, if you have the opportunity to identify the rooms that might be able to get you one step closer or that have the people that you look up to in them, go. Again, it's the surrounding yourself with the right people and choosing who inspires you. And I needed to be inspired by somebody. And I think that's how I made the decision to end up going. I'm saying it's a gut feeling. I'm trying to think deeper than that. What was it that actually made me want to go there? And it's probably because I looked up to his story and I needed to get inspired by somebody.
I want to frame something you just said because that's really interesting. You said, "Oh my God, I was looking for a job on LinkedIn, and that's the worst possible place to look for a job." Everyone's looking for a job on LinkedIn right now. Tell us more.
I so deeply in me believe that that's never how you're going to get a job. You have to go there, out there, identify the companies that you're actually interested in working for, that have a mission that you believe in. And then you have to cold outreach to everybody who works there. Also, now that I hire so many people, I also know I never post job listings. I'll tell you from a hiring perspective, and I'll tell you my other perspective. From a hiring perspective, every time I post a job on LinkedIn, I'm getting tons of applicants who have no interest in what it is we're building, what we're doing. It's the type of people who are applying to 100 different jobs. They're going through the list. They're seeing these things. It's not that they're not qualified for it. Sometimes we get people that are way overqualified for certain jobs that we're putting out there. So I actually stopped putting job listings on LinkedIn because 90%, I would say even higher, 95% of the applicants we get are not people that we're going to end up speaking to. So from a candidate perspective, imagine that you're in a pool of people where there's a ton of people that your hiring manager has to sift through that do not belong in that job. Your CV might be perfect for it, but you're now in this pool of people. The way you differentiate yourself, you have to figure out what type of job you want first. Whether it's type of job or mission of the company, one of the two, you have to figure something out between those two. And that can be really difficult when you don't know what to do. The good news is there's so many companies out there, so you will find some that you're interested in. Out of those, you figure out everybody who works there, and then you cold outreach to every single person, every junior engineer, every assistant, every CEO, every country manager. You reach out to everybody. When BeReal got acquired last year, there was an app I was dying to work for. I mean, dying to work for. I reached out to everybody there. An assistant gave me the CEO's email just for, yeah, which you probably shouldn't have done. but I got it. What I'm saying is like, don't like call yourself, be so relentless. If you want it, be relentless. I speak to everybody who cold emails me. I speak to everybody who cold messages me because it already shows you're a step ahead of everybody else. So this is just how you get your foot in the door. Show that you want something. Don't put yourself, I bet you're all exceptional candidates, the people that are listening to this. Don't put yourself in the pool, in the like 95% pool of people. Make yourself exceptional and stand out by being relentless. People want relentless people. Like it's the truth. They're going to be the overperformers in the job. So that's my best advice.
Great. Let's double down on network. Let's get tactical. So, okay, fine, Mathilde. Like, I really want to work for Nike. I'm going to reach out to people at Nike. What do I say? Like, what am I telling them?
Will never stay too formal in the messages that I reach out to. It will always sound a tiny bit familiar and a little bit aggressive. I think I'm very much like, this is what I did in my previous jobs. Like, it's always what I'll be like, I worked at BeReal. They just got sold for 500 million euros. Like, I will name drop like crazy. Obviously, not everybody will have something to name drop, but make whatever it is you've done. I'm sure you can find a way to beautify it, whether it's what you studied or how well you did in school or any club that you were a part of. I think people that were part of university clubs is something I look a lot at for entry level hires because they just show that extra like grit. So there's always going to be something that you did that you're proud of. Find a way to package it that's going to be really compelling. Include that in your story. And then I include a few sentences about why I want to work there. I only reach out to companies that I really want to work for. So usually have a really good reason.
When you tell your story, especially for people who are listening who may be feeling like they messed up, their lives are over, etc., like what's something that you would like them to take away from your story that might like, inspire them?
It's more of a concept, really, and this is something my mom's always told me throughout her life. And I'll say it in Danish first. Det er ikke noget, der er så skidt, det ikke er godt for noget. It means there's nothing that's so bad, it's not good for something. And I don't know if it's like perfectly translated, but the thing is, you think the world is on fire when bad things happen to you. There's always a silver lining. Like I guarantee that. I don't believe that there is not a silver lining in everything. And again, there are nuances to that, and I want to underline like there are things that people go through that are obviously really really difficult, but find the things that are good and lean into those, and it's going to lead you to places that are freaking awesome. And then I think trust in yourself is like the second thing. I know you gave me one piece, but I'll say this also. I think trusting in yourself, I think had I just trusted a little bit more in my abilities to do things, I wouldn't have spent so much time being worried. I don't think I would have been further than I am today, but I spent a lot of time worrying. I spent a lot of time being anxious about the lack of clarity in my life. I wish I had just spent a little more time being like, I've always figured it out up until now. Every time something bad happened, it got better afterwards. Just trust that.
I think the ability to figure things out is highly underrated for ourselves. Like if I figured other things out, I'm going to do it again. It doesn't, and that's not a specific skill that you put on your resume, but eventually it kind of is, and it really can be transformative. So that's great advice. And Mathilde, do you know that the title of this podcast, the name of this podcast is Unplannable. It's about how life's unplannable. So what do you think is unplannable for you moving forward?
I'm in an interesting position. I'm in the US on a visa that I have 2 more years left on. I can't plan for what's going to happen after that. Am I going to stay here? Am I going to go back to Europe? And am I going to go on another like a gap year trip? I don't know. I think that's what feels very unplannable at the moment is I can't plan beyond those 2 years just because of that situation. But I'm actually a little excited about that uncertainty. I think I'm like it's giving me a little bit of a kick now, not knowing that what's going to happen, just because it's gotten better before. There might be something unplannable that happens between now and then, and then the visa is the least of my worries. Who knows? But yeah,
Yeah, no, I've been on visa, so I know how that
yeah,
feels.
you know what it is.
Um, and I have lost my visa multiple times. Mathilde, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a pleasure and full of great nuggets for anyone listening. Thank you for your time.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Gina. You're so lovely to speak to, and thank you for listening to me ramble.